Greetings and salutations. Welcome to another episode of 365 Days of Gaming. Thank you for taking time to check out this video. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Thank you in advance. Now, I told you we were going to do more 64 games. Not a lot of 64 games, but definitely some 64 games. And of course, I have to do some of the more well-known classics because that's what I experienced in my 64 journey because I didn't own one. And I want to take a kind of different approach to talking about some of these games. So today we're going to talk about GoldenEye, right? Or as some of you already know it as 007. And I want to give you a different perspective on this because everybody knows that the bulk of the gameplay that people did with this game was during the multiplayer, and for great reason, right? It's one of the first console first-person shooters that worked, and it's one of these kind of bridged the gap between what was going on the PC and what became the standard as far as all shooting games, over the next 10 years. But it kind of started in the console. Like all we had was Doom and maybe Wolfenstein. It kind of started, and then GoldenEye really just took it off to the next phase. So I wanted to talk about that, but not so much about the multiplayer aspect, because while that is, fantastic, I really feel like people sometimes overlook the fact that we got an extremely well-designed, well-developed, well-playing single-player game. And it's a movie adaptation, which, as we all know, doesn't always go well. But this was kind of like the perfect storm of gameplay and combining, retelling the story of the movie. Like you're playing through the movie essentially, right? Obviously it's a bit more fleshed out for a video game purpose, but you're doing missions that were all based around what happened in the movie. The characters are their movie counterparts in video game form, and it really kind of opened up the potential of you can take an IP that's not only a lot of times it's like TV shows or comics or cartoons that make some of the best video games, but in this case this was just a movie. It was just one of the James Bond movies that happened to get a video game tie-in, and it really came out well. And the game, it took what the system allowed it to do and maximized it. You're playing on a Nintendo 64, and personally, not one of my favorite controllers, because of the analog stick being in the middle, and I was always a D-pad person, and I'm not a first-person shooter fan, by nature. So this game was doing a lot of getting me out of my comfort zone, but it did it in such a way that was so smooth and such a great experience that, I couldn't do anything but respect it and enjoy it. And it made you want to keep playing. This game kind of made me a Bond fan because, I was a kid when the Pierce Brosnan and James Bond started. And James Bond's, British secret agent, it wasn't something that people from my neighborhood were really jazzed up about, oh yeah, let's go watch this British secret agent movie. But this game kind of changed that for me, and people from my neighborhood were like, oh, wait a minute, we kind of rock with this James Bond dude. And so as you go through the missions, you got different weapons, there are different difficulties you can play on, but just the auto aim system, for example, where if you're aiming in the general direction of the enemies, he's a secret agent, he can hit them. And I know that's kind of it makes the game kind of easy once you get a hang of it, but again, you're supposed to be that dude. So I'm always a fan of games not only telling you but showing you how good your character is by allowing them to be better than the opposition, and this game does a great job of that. You can still do free aim, which I always thought was a smart idea. Even though it's a bit slower, it can still get the job done. If you want to snipe and stuff like that. Now, granted, some of the hardware that we're using in order to get this footage isn't, a one-to-one duplicate of the sensitivity and all of that. And these are things that they obviously don't have back in the day, right? There's no changing of your sensitivity. If you were lucky, the game will let you invert the y-axis. But other than that, you got to deal with what you got to deal with. But I always thought this was a good job of having some of the smoothest controls for the 64. Again, the system that I was not familiar with a lot of the time, but also just not my personal favorite control system. So playing this game and going through it again, and just yeah, I definitely remember some weekends chilling at a friend's house or a cousin, and let's run through, GoldenEye. It's bet, it's an easy answer, right? And then, you know, the presentation of it was definitely something that we hadn't gotten a lot of from a lot of these games. You know, again, this is like 98. So the idea of all of these cutscenes for an action game, like cutscenes were a thing back then to me that were reserved for things like RPGs, right? You see this little FMV sequence that you have no control over, and it's using like, you know, obviously pre-rendered graphics and all of that. But this game was using the in-game engine for the entire game. And I thought that was another really cool feature that, you know, kind of helped you keep the immersion factor, you know, really high. So I know you know about this game, and we can talk about the multiplayer memories in the comments. I'd love to hear some of your favorite multiplayer memories, but I wanted to kind of just give a shout out to the single player mode because I always felt like, you know, nobody talked about it because of how good the multiplayer is. So we can do it here. But as always, I appreciate you letting me reminisce with you. Y'all have fun. Y'all be safe. Peace.